When I played FlatOut for the first time a couple of years ago, I was surprised it took me that long to even know what it was. It was thanks to my Patreon supporters that made me decide to review it, and the damage model was detailed, the physics were on point for what it was essentially a folk racer in video game form. It was the first multi-platform title to come out of Finland and was successful enough for a sequel to be greenlit. Success that carried from other vehicular combat games including Destruction Derby and Carmageddon, the next name of crunching metal on half-baked circuits and arenas. Developers Bugbear Entertainment knew they had a special concept on their hands. They liked the basic idea of the first game, so the best step going forward was to add twice as much content. More tracks, more cars, more stunts, events, and things to do with 5,000 dynamic objects destructible on said tracks. And they realized that in a lot of racing games, none of the opponents have distinct personalities, so they made every driver unique based on skill and aggression levels. They looked at feedback very carefully and tried to emphasize the strengths and eliminate the weak points. Enough to slightly change the way you need to go about racing and killing your rivals. I mean, what else does it look like? FlatOut 2 was released for the PC, PlayStation 2 and Xbox in Europe on June 2006 and the rest of the world by August, with an enhanced port released a year later on the PC, PlayStation Portable and Xbox 360. We're primarily looking at Ultimate Carnage on the 360, which is considered the best one critically. How I got this copy, it came part of an Xbox 360 bundle, all for $20 combined. Most I know I'm never going to play, but it was a good head start before I got my hands on a 360 console. And considering the price of FlatOut Ultimate Carnage on the 360 nowadays, geez, where did they cough up that figure? That alone makes this a good deal. Also, thank you Peter GT for requesting this game on the Patreon suggestion thread. Like the first FlatOut review, this video exists because this suggestion got the most likes. The link to support on Patreon is in the description below. Thanks everyone. That's one way to introduce a video game. Like, you thought the first one was destructive, here you have a lot more fire and explosions. And the ragdoll physics, it's like multiple Woody dolls flying everywhere. Even going from PC to the Xbox 360, the physics, driving mechanics, destructible props, all the elements that made FlatOut a solid racer in its own way, it feels very similar here. So many destructible props like tires, signs, and the damage physics, it's all coming back to me. You look at every angle, something's being destroyed. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they're secretly using Valve's Source engine to run this game. Again, taking inspiration from folk racing, which is very popular in Finland, but added more vehicles and environments including street racing and circuits, setting themselves all over the world, including deserts, closed circuits, and city centers, looking closer to Burnout Revenge, Stuntman Ignition, or Split Second. By this point, it's not even folk racing anymore if you can drive through city malls and empty riverbeds. It's clearly taken inspiration from Need for Speed at the time, but it still has a lot of destructible props like tire barriers, construction equipment, street lights, so I am completely fine with that. The game does feel slower, like the cars are driving in slow motion at 80% of the speed. It could be the frame rate being half from the PC version messing with my head. You know, by the time I've upgraded the fastest car in my class, my mind got used to it. And having literally thousands of obstacles scattered all over every circuit, one is bound to get stuck on the car for a lap or two. The opponent always seems to be faster when this happens. I'm convinced it affects the performance. Again, the debris left on the track slow you down when you run over it. Only a tiny bit, but it's noticeable and it stays on the track the entire race. It's not for show, unlike most racing games, is what I'm getting at. Everything I loved about the first game is here, but with better hardware means more things can be smashed on screen, better damage model for cars, more opponents on the track. It feels less like those PC exclusives you had on CD but can't remember how you got it, and more like it belongs amongst the rest of the established races like Burnout or Forza. The driving mechanics have improved as well, particularly the chase camera. It's not as loose, which make the handling feel like it delayed a second too late, like in the first game, and the tires have more grip. It makes each vehicle type unique. Most of the street cars, for example, have the suspension set too tightly since they're highly prone to flipping like a fan turned on a hot summer's day. Cars still feel heavy, but the right kind that makes the physics in FlatOut games stand out. But if you compare the first two titles, the detail is night and day. When comparing FlatOut 2 in the enhanced port, Ultimate Carnage is similar to Burnout Revenge or Need for Speed Most Wanted on the Xbox 360, a shinier gloss over from one generation to another with a few extra cars, circuits, and dynamic objects on each one, 8,000 instead of 5,000. The latter looks darker and grittier, which fits with the type of gameplay better. So if you're a sucker for graphics like most people are nowadays, this is the version to go for. However, when I looked at the soundtrack for both versions, because they're different as well, I honestly don't know why they didn't just use this one for both versions, because FlatOut 2 clearly has a better soundtrack with more recognizable names like Wolfmother, Megadeth, Rob Zombie, Rise Against, and Motley Crue to name a few. Luckily in my case I just put the FlatOut 2 playlist on Spotify in the background, problem solved, as well as mods to swap the soundtrack around to what it should be. The career mode structure is identical from the predecessor, progress through the cups to unlock more, but instead of bronze, silver, and gold, there are multiple vehicle classes including derby, race, and street, with a few bonus ones thrown in there including, well, derby, figure 8, and speedway. Derby is a really good one. I especially like that it's not about being the last driver standing, but how many cars you can take out in one go. It's a similar satisfaction I get as taking down opponents in a Burnout game. There is an element of luck needed to T-bone the sweet spot. It always seems like I'm unintentionally dodging more cars than hitting them, but it's fun enough that you don't want to give up until you get the gold. Figure 8 is exactly that, not being a fan of being T-boned beyond your control because you gained a healthy lead, though thanks to the track design it's less likely to happen than the predecessor. And speedways, when you have circuits where there are anywhere near as many obstacles to run into, there honestly isn't much else you can say other than have a car with a good top speed. Which I didn't in this case. The other game modes are mostly outside of the career mode, which showcase the ragdoll physics a lot better, and take things to an even crazier level than the first FlatOut. I mean, why have high jump or long jump when you can go bowling, kick a field goal, go gambling at the casino, shoot some hoops, or score a goal from a set piece? I find it amusing that it's called soccer in a game developed in Finland, and look at the pads on some of these stunts as if they really care for the stuntman's safety. The themes and aesthetic of each stunt are really nice, like a pretend giant bowling ball rolling back from the side, the endless number of wooden cutouts, the rings of fire, and being set in a stadium like it's the Olympics in an alternate universe. It looks fantastic. And the comical scream from the driver every time he flies through the windscreen is music to my ears, even if there is no music in the background. Otherwise, if it weren't for these stunts, I would have forgotten it was a selling point to begin with, given how little occurs in the race events. Exclusive to Ultimate Carnage is, well, Carnage mode, and whoever added this to the game is a genius! Similar to Derby, the events are more than just winning. Replacing race position with an arcade-style point system where you earn it by causing as much chaos on the track, smashing opponents, objects, the boost tank fills up faster, the position you're in is the multiplier, all in a time limit with checkpoints, so technically placing first at the end doesn't mean you'll get the gold trophy. Reminds me of Carmageddon. It gives you an excuse to enter these stunts since they're part of it as well. The derbies have lives and power-ups like Twisted Metal as if it wasn't chaotic enough. Now I'm totaling at least a couple dozen cars in one run. And finally, Beat the Bomb is like Speed 2, only a car instead of a boat. Just keep going through the checkpoints to prevent the timer and bomb from setting off. Carnage mode just makes the conventional career mode look boring. Like they might as well have just replaced it with Carnage mode. Well, no, of course, but it puts into perspective just how much variety of game modes you have at your disposal. At least 20 hours to clear everything. I would have thought changing vehicle types would designate you on the type of circuits to fit with the events, like street races being exclusively in the city centers like in the opening video, but it's just the vehicle type and bonus event. Even the opponents on the track are exactly the same. I wonder how, if you're the one earning the prize money. Like I would have thought more new characters would be introduced over time. Anyway, they all have unique characteristics based mostly on skill and aggression levels. Reminds me of the Road Rash series. Though from my experience, I can never tell since they're always slamming into each other regardless. This is a FlatOut game after all. What caught me off guard in the first couple of hours of gameplay was how hard it was to win races. Most of the early footage files are only a few minutes each because I was retrying the same race over and over again. It was giving me split second and stuntman vibes. Even if you install every possible upgrade for your car, it isn't as quick as the opponents, and the better ones aren't unlocked until you've won a certain number of cups. It always seems like the opponents either overtake you easily or bump into the back of you. You're starting at the back of the line every race, and most of the circuits you race on, particularly the forest ones that look like they're made for folk racing, don't have many obstacles or jumps. Like the first game, cars have nitro systems and you fill it by running into all the destructible obstacles on the road, smashing into opponents hard and jumps. But a fair few of these tracks barely give you any opportunity to fill the tank. Car damage isn't as relevant either. Yes, they can be total to the point of ending your race, but it never happened to me once throughout the playthrough. Developer UC Luckinen claimed it was the opposite. It was meant to be easier at the start and it got harder progressively. Is Finland opposite land or something? Even in Carnage mode, some of the scores needed to reach the gold are ridiculously high. Like you need a perfect run on those races and stunts, which is easier said than done. Most of the events can be highly luck-based for better and worse, whether it's leftover debris flipping over your car or the opponent pulling a pit maneuver on you. But it can also depend on how well the opponents perform against each other, since their form is inconsistent. Even if you don't see it, they can easily get tangled with each other, tangled by the leftover debris themselves after every new lap. Every lap is a unique one, and even that can help with the results in the standings, with opponents being all over the joint, so you can find yourself finishing on the podium and almost never finishing first and still easily win the championship. You can also earn points from being an aggressive and quick driver, though if I place first, then how can I not be the fastest? You don't actually earn credits from winning races, so being consistent is the best way, even if you don't see many of these in the process. And once I finally unlocked the fastest cars and had the money to buy them, then the game was suddenly a breeze. Yeah, suck on that, opponents! Even by the time I unlocked the other racing classes, with the occasional race here and there, the rest of the events were a breeze as well. You can also save in the middle of a championship, quit the game and come back to it, which is handy for those cups with as many as 5 or 6 races in one. And as the laps go by, with all the debris scattered to the side, the lap times are faster, I've got a good idea of where all the shortcuts are. Though by the time I got to the street events, then it got challenging again. Like I said before, these cars behave if there's no suspension inside, and no matter what the character descriptions say on the loading screen, they want you to fly through that windscreen. But it's so explosive and bonkers, even a podium just leaves me with a smile on my face because it's that exciting. It's a very good racing game. Even then, part of the excitement in FlatOut is the destructive nature, and it was there all the time. It's a sequel that improves on every aspect. The variety, the damage models, destructible objects on the road, and the Carnage mode gives you an excuse to go 110% with the aggression. That was a really clever mode they introduced there. Again, for the price of the 360, I would recommend the PC version if you want to save some money. It seems like the FlatOut titles are on sale at least every month on Steam. And after playing this game, someone needs to tell me, how the hell did Team 6 Studios make a follow-up to this? Legitimately one of the worst games ever made. That's even more impressive than mixed reviews when you had a lot to work with. Yeah, fortunately Bugbear didn't do that. The Finns went on to make other racing games including Ridge Racer Unbound and the true sequel to FlatOut 2, spiritual successor Wreckfest, so they got the last laugh. Bugbear are even in the middle of developing a sequel to that at the time of this review. I think I should go straight to Wreckfest instead of FlatOut 3. What do you guys think? Thanks everyone on Patreon, you're the reason this video exists with your review suggestion thread, including Anthony Costins, Bibbs, Brittleback, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, Emmanuel Figueroa, Eric Barboza, Atmosphere, Indie DM, Alan Craft, Night Kid Gaming, Peach GT, Roman Arteminov, Ruben Pekolk, Sam Sneed, Tickford45, Thomas Rosendale, Will Stokes, and of course, everyone for watching. Again, I was surprised how good FlatOut 2/Ultimate Carnage is. Very hard on certain occasions, but still very good. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, follow on Twitch where I live stream 3 days a week, support on Patreon, join the Discord server, follow on Instagram, Twitter/X, and Facebook. Thanks again for watching. Spinny out.